Hello and welcome to today's tasting of live demonstrations and Q&A in relation to UltraStrands. Last week we really introduced you to UltraStrands, the product, so you got the opportunity to see what the product looked like. I talked about the various sizes and the fact that you can have it in different densities, and I answered quite a few questions that came out in relation to the product itself. This week, a lot of the questions that we've been having is around the installation. So, how does it get installed? How does it stay? How long does it last in that method? Is it something that will last for life? That if I've installed it once, is that it? Do I need to do anything else after that? So these are the kind of questions we've been having this week. And what I thought I would do is actually demonstrate to you some of the aspects of the installation so that you can see for yourself. Also, it's important to understand how it's installed, because then you'd know whether it's something that could work for you or not. And if you do go to an approved salon to get your hair, get your UltraStrands installed, then you will also know that they're doing it the right way as well. So it's really good and important to gear yourself up with knowledge. Knowledge is wisdom, but it only becomes wisdom if you use it in the right manner. So what I'm going to start off with is showing you the tools. Now, first of all, there are specific tools that are used in the installation process, and I'm just going to take you through each one step by step so that you can understand exactly what these tools are used for. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is what we call the pull-through. Now, this is a double-sided tool, and what we will see is that this tool, this tip here, is the bit that your technician will be using to pull your own hair through the actual UltraStand volumizer. The other side is actually used to put beads on and put the actual connections that would be applied onto your own hair and attached onto your hair, but I'll show you exactly how this works. Then you will see something that looks similar to this, which is what we call our clamping tool, and that's used to actually clamp those attachments in place so that they don't move. So you'll see the technician using something like this, either something exactly like this or similar, to clamp your the beads, which is the example that I'm going to be using today, in place. And as you can see, if I move it closer, it's also got some holes, it's some openings there. And the openings there are used to actually open the connection. So when you're coming in for your refit or your resecure, the connections need to be opened. And it's simply just, they just close it, clamp it tight, and that opens the connection so the connections can easily slide off. But again, I'll show this to you. And the third thing, which is what I call, this is also a feeder, but what it can do is that it can feed two different types of beads. So it can feed the smaller beads, which is probably, I don't know if you can see, the smaller beads just there. Okay, those two. And the bigger beads that are there as well. So we use both a combination of smaller beads and the larger beads. Generally, the larger beads will go towards the back and the smaller beads at the front. And honestly, if the smaller beads are placed on your hand, you can hardly see them. They're so tiny. I've got two different colors there just to demonstrate that they are color coded, in the sense that they are the colors that are used are the colors that will best blend with your own hair. So if you've got blonde hair, then you'll have a lighter bead. If you've got dark hair, then you have a darker bead, because the whole essence is that it blends in. But I'm using two different colors today so that you can see from the demonstration exactly what I'm doing. So essentially, those are the tools, and I showed you on there the beads that we'll be playing with or we'll be using today. And there are different methods of installation, but I'm just going to take you through the simplest method of installation today. The reason being is that that's because that's what most people use. There are scenarios where you'll have an exception to that rule, and that's perfectly fine. And majority of the technicians are, they're geared up to do all the different methods that are available. But however, this is the simplest one to do, and essentially, it also allows for a simple, easy maintenance process. So I'm just going to take you through the process now. So if I just bring the mannequin forward, if you can see that, and I'm just going to take my name off the screen because I'm sure by now you know who I am. So there we go. So the very first thing in understanding whether UltraStrands would work for you is that UltraStrands sits just directly behind your hairline. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have to have a very thick hairline. You can have a very fine hairline, but the ultimate goal is to allow the UltraStrand to sit directly behind that hairline as opposed to what in front. Now, if you really don't have much of a hairline and the UltraStrands does need to sit in front, the likelihood then is that you're not going to be wearing your hair backwards or up in that sense. You would have to have a portion of it down to cover the UltraStrands that is directly in front of your hairline. But in most scenarios, the UltraStrand is placed directly behind your hairline. If you're not sure as to whether you've got enough hair in relation to UltraStrands, I'd say go in for consultation and check to see whether that will work for you. So the first thing that will happen in the installation is the UltraStrands will be placed on your hair. Now, this is an example of the UltraStrands that I'm using. And as you can see, it's got the holes in there as well. So what the technician will do is align the UltraStrands just above your hairline, as you can see there. And also you've got some input in this period as well, because if you'd prefer it to be slightly further back or a tad forward, then you can also ask for that. But essentially what they will do is they'll line it just behind your hairline. They'll check with you to make sure that you're comfortable with that, and then they can start the attachment. What tends to happen at first is that you'll have like a temporary attachment, one in the front, one at the back, and two at the sides, just to hold it in place while they start to work on it. So I'm going to put a couple of temporary attachments in there so that you can see. And when they're doing the attachments, they will be using the beads as well. So I always recommend that when the beads are being used, that it is going to be the larger beads as opposed to the smaller beads, and also to use a different color to your own hair to ensure that it's not forgotten inside. So as I said before, this is the pull through. So this is what we use to pull your hair through. But at this moment in time, I'm just going to be using it to attach. So to secure in place, you take a portion of your own natural hair, a portion of the volumizer itself. And this is not a tight securing, so you shouldn't expect to feel any tension on this. This is just to hold it in place. That's clamped in there. For the purpose of time, I'm just going to put one at the front and one at the back. And then I'll move on to the next stage of the installation. Okay. So once that's then secured in place, this is the point for where you can now check to make sure that you're comfortable with it. You can check that it's far forward enough and not too far back. And you can actually move your hair around at this point, because now it's secured on your hair to the point that it's not going to fall off or move around. Now, the next thing is the pulling of your hair through. Now, with UltraStrands, all your hair is pulled through the holes. As you can see, the volumizer itself has got the holes on. So you're not relying on any other thing other than what you've got on your head. Now, there should be nothing additional that is attached onto your own hair other than the securing methods. Just so that you can see here, the tool that they would use is a tool here, and you can see it's got a slight hook at the bottom, and all that will happen is your hair is being pulled through the holes. Now, I do have a question where people do ask, how do I know if it's going to work for me? Now, we've got 3 different hole sizes: large hole size, a medium hole size, and a small hole size. You should fit in one of those hole sizes. Now, if, for example, you do not have sufficient hair for the smallest hole size, then the likelihood is that UltraStrands won't work for you or won't be the best option, or you would have to blend UltraStrands in with the other solutions, such as the closures in the areas where your hair is very, very fine. But in most scenarios, when you're looking at standard thinning hair or standard fine hair, a medium-sized hole is sufficient. And as you can see, I'm just pulling through the hair. And that is what would happen. Technician will pull the hair all the way through, ensuring that every single strand of hair, as much as possible, is pulled through the volumizer. It is the combination of your own hair and the hair on the volumizer that gives you the volume. And it's just a case of going through section by section, pulling your hair through. The process of pulling your hair through should not be painful at all. In fact, most times it's very soothing. So if you are feeling any pains at this point in time, please let the technician know, because you're not supposed to. In fact, the whole process should not be painful. You shouldn't have to feel like, you're getting a volumizer and therefore you must feel pain. That's not the way it works. Obviously, it needs to be as secure as possible, but not in such a way that it's giving you a headache. So once all the hair is pulled through, or at least majority of the hair is pulled through, then the connection can start. Now, the connection is no different to what I've done in front here, but the connections are around the sides and the back, and it's at the edge. So I'm just going to show you what the edge of the volumizer looks like, so you can see how the connection is going to work, and hopefully I can move this in your direction. Let's see how far we can go. So that's the edge of the volumizer. As you can see, it blends seamlessly with the client's own hair, or it will blend seamlessly with your own hair in this instance. And all that will happen is at various intervals, the technician will take a section of your own hair above the volumizer. That's a section of your own hair above the volumizer, and a section of your own hair below the volumizer. So in between here is where the volumizer is. So this bit here is where the volumizer is. They would then take both sections of your hair from above and below, and they will clamp that in place. And I'm using a different color so that you can see. And the process is there. Just going to do that again. Section of your own hair above the volumizer. Section of your own hair below the volumizer. The volumizer sits in between. I'm going to use a darker bead in this case. And it's clamped in place. So as you can see, the darker bead is more visible than the lighter bead. This was just for demonstration purposes, but you're going to have something similar to this color if you're on dark hair. And all that happens is the bonds are created all around the perimeter of the volumizer itself, which will then mean that the volumizer will not move. Once that's done, the temporary connections are removed and taken out. So this is a temporary connection. I'm just going to show you the temporary connection here so that you can just see how it's removed. So as I was showing you the tools before, literally it goes in, squishes, and then it's removed. And now as you're going towards the front you will definitely use the smaller beads as opposed to the larger beads. So I'm just going to show you an example. The same process works, but what happens with the front is ensuring that wherever your parting is, that there is not a bead in that section, because obviously if there's a bead in that section, the likelihood is that that's going to be seen. So the way the technician would do it is they would put the beads either side of wherever your parting would be, and also allow it to be hidden in such a way that even if you did move your hair from one direction to another, it will still not be seen. If it is the case that, you know, a bead has been put in and it's still visible, then there's other options which can be used to do the installation. But I'm not going to take you through those options today. So again, in the scenario at the front, you always will use the smaller beads as opposed to the larger beads. I'm just going to show it to you with a let's do that again, shall we? One thing that's important is always to make sure that sufficient hair is added, but not too much hair is taken, because the beads are so small, there's only so much hair that can go through the bead. This is an example, and I'm using a lighter bead so that you can just see. Clamp that in place. And ultimately, that is how the installation would be. And what I've done on this side, you do it also, it will get done on the other side as well, and all the way through the back. And your volumizer is installed. And at the end, what will then happen is any hair that has not been pulled through will be pulled through, because the objective is to get as much hair as possible coming through the volumizer. And this will now allow you to work with your hair in whatever way you want to. And you can wear it off your face, wear it as a parting. Once the volumizer is installed, then you'd go into the next stage, which will be the cutting and the shaping, so that it's shaped in directly with your own hair. So that essentially is how the UltraStrands is installed. The other methods that we use are not that much different to this particular method. So the key thing is ensuring that once the installation is completed, that you're happy with it. So please ensure that you do not leave the clinic or you do not leave the salon feeling unhappy. Make sure that any concerns or anything like that has been ironed out. The installation has been created so that it gives you as much comfort as possible, and also is kind to your hair as well. Next week, we'll be talking a lot about the maintenance side of things and why it's important to have the maintenance visits. That will be next week. So I suggest that if you were thinking of missing it, change your mind and do tune in 4:30 next week. Again, talking about UltraStrands and answering all your questions. And if you've got any questions at this point, anything that we've not answered for you, then please do give us a shout, because I'm looking forward to answering all your questions. Take care. Bye-bye.